You are listening to the East Texas Banner right here at easttexasbanner.com. We've got the privilege this morning of sitting down with Trent Ashby, just to really kind of pick your thoughts about this race and about who you are and that type of thing. We want to thank the Bell Gym for allowing us the space to sit down. But Trent, thank you for coming.
Jay, thanks for having me. Great to be with you this morning here on the East Texas Banner. Great to be back in downtown Jasper.
There you go. There you go. So you grew up in Rusk County.
Correct.
On a dairy farm.
That's right.
What kind of a life was that?
It was a life full of long days, early mornings, and hard work.
Sure.
My dad, he always wanted to be a dairy farmer, and so he ran a dairy. Was actually the last dairy farm standing when he retired. Ran his dairy for over 45 years, and of course, like a lot of small dairy farmers, we grew our crops. We also were very involved, of course, in 4-H and FFA. Okay. Showed cattle growing up my whole life, and so we had a fair to finish hog operation. We raised lambs and goats, and
really
showed chickens and broilers and capons, and so we had a zoo out there, as our friends used to say.
So that's not what you'd call white collar work.
Not at all. About as blue collar as you can get.
Sure.
Red dirt roads.
That's right. That's right. So tell us a little bit about this race. Now you're running for the Senate seat that's been historically held by Senator Nichols.
Right.
And that is Senate District 3, if I'm correct on that.
Senate District 3.
And that's a huge area.
Large swath of Texas is encompassed in Senate District 3. So for your viewers, Senate District 3, if you start up in really the northernmost county, Henderson County, okay. Which of course is, you've got Maybank, Gun Barrel City, and that whole area, right. And you come all the way down to about Jacksonville, and then head due east through Nacogdoches over to Shelby County,
sure.
And Sabine River, and then drop down all the way to Orange County.
Okay.
This district has about 75% of the population in Jefferson County.
Okay.
And then moves over into Liberty County, and then starts moving back up into Deep East Texas from there. So there's 18 counties in Senate District 3. So you've got really what I would call the bulk of East and then Southeast Texas in Senate District 3.
So they didn't give you a small area to go and canvass.
That's right. It is as I've learned here over the last few months. It is a big piece of Texas, but it's a beautiful place, of course, with
sure.
the best people.
Sure.
And I live in Angelina County. I live just right on the tip of Lufkin, and geographically speaking, it's a good place to be, to really service the entire district, because you're a little less than 2 hours to the northernmost corner, right. And you're just right at 2 hours to the southeasternmost corner. So it is a big piece of territory. I think it's also would be interesting for folks to know that there are 31 Senate districts in the state of Texas.
Okay.
And those are, of course, laid out in our state constitution, the number 31. And, of course, every 10 years after the census, we redraw our political boundaries in the House and the Senate.
Right.
And so each senator currently represents just shy of 1 million people.
Okay.
So there's about 950,000 people in Senate District 3.
Wow.
Yeah, about 31 million people in Texas.
Yeah.
So it's a great part of the state, and of course I've been blessed to grow up here, call it home my whole life. And yes, Senator Nichols, at the end of his term, which will be at the end of next year, 2026, he will serve 20 years in the Texas Senate.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That is really wild. So just giving a little bit of history, there's some people who's going to automatically take issue with this, but you have a bachelor's at Texas A&M. And so...
That's right. Yes, there may be a few Longhorn fans out there that won't like to hear this, but yes, I am an Aggie,
right?
And proud Aggie. Majored in agriculture economics, and was real blessed to be able to just be accepted
Sure.
to Texas A&M and to further my education. And fortunately, due to a Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo scholarship, was able to afford it. So,
Wow.
yeah, and just to balance this conversation, I've got two boys. My oldest son, he wanted to be an electrical engineer, and so he actually went to the University of Texas. He kind of broke off from the rest of our family,
Sure,
which
sure.
I have a lot of Aggies in my family.
Right.
But he's our first Longhorn.
There you go.
And then my baby, our youngest son, he is at Texas A&M.
Very cool. So what are you currently doing now, employment-wise? What are you involved with now?
Yeah, so now that my wife Nikki and I are empty nesters, and we've been married 28 years this year,
Good deal.
I really have several jobs.
Okay.
My full-time job, and I have two of those. One of my full-time jobs is, I'm a state representative for 6 counties in
Yeah.
Deep East Texas. Of course, I mentioned I live in Angelina, and then I have 5 counties that really make a horseshoe around Angelina: St. Augustine, Tyler, Polk, Trinity, and Houston counties. And
Okay.
I've had the privilege and the great blessing of representing them since 2013. So
Yeah.
I'm in my 7th term representing those 6 counties in the Texas House. And so that's a full-time job.
Right.
And I make that a full-time job. But also, is because probably most of your viewers know, your legislators in Austin, your senators and your House members, we make $600 a month. Our Constitution, our framers and our forefathers, they established citizen legislators so that it was not something you run for to really earn. You don't make any money doing it, right? And so you really have to be retired, independently wealthy, or have a job that allows you the flexibility to be a full-time legislator. And so my day job is I'm a community banker.
Okay.
For a community bank there in Lufkin.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So you've been in the House for over a decade.
Correct.
What do you feel like people maybe folks out here really don't understand about what you guys do from a representative standpoint? I know the idea is that you represent the people of your district and this type of thing, but once you get to Austin, it's there's been a lot said from a lot of different Texas politicians saying once you get to Austin, it kind of becomes it becomes something else. It's like or for some people it becomes something else. It's Austin's kind of looked at as the establishment. Maybe Austin specific. It's a little bit more liberal than I would say East Texas.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt about that. Yeah, unfortunately.
But at the same time, what are some of the things you've seen over the last decade that really kind of stand out to you just from what you've been able to do as a representative? What are some of the things that you've seen?
Yeah. Well, I will say this. As a House member, we all House members, all 150 of us, we only represent about 195,000 people.
Right.
So we're, as House members, are a lot closer to the people, if you will.
Gotcha.
Than say our Congress people and maybe in our state senators, and that we represent a much smaller, group. And so I hear that, from time to time that, well, sometimes when you get elected, you can, maybe spend too much time in Austin or be somewhat detached from your constituents. In my experience, in looking at my colleagues and certainly knowing the way I work my district, that's really not the case. And because if you ignore or you don't take care of your constituents or your district, you're probably not going to stay in office very long, especially in a region of the state like East Texas and Deep East Texas, where they expect, they want to know their representatives, they want to see their representatives, and they want to be able to hold them accountable.
Sure.
And so, one thing I've always said, that when I leave public service, I always want to be able to hold my hat on the rack of, he was visible. He was in our communities. And I think if you go talk to the people that live in the 6 counties in House District 9,
Right.
they're going to tell you that, one thing about Ashby is he always answered the call when we called his office
Yeah.
or when we called him. And secondly, he was always present at our community events. And I think that's so important for our elected officials, really at all level of government.
Right.
The other thing is, and again, I can't take any credit for this, Jay, but when our forefathers set up our citizen legislature
Right.
in Austin, it is very different than the rest of the country, the way their state governments operate, and of course our federal government. We only meet every odd number year for 140 days,
Right.
about 5 months. And the beauty of that is once we finish the people's business in Austin, we get to come home and live under the laws that we create.
Right.
And so we hear firsthand on a very personal level,
You're getting real-time feedback.
real-time feedback
Right.
from the people that we represent, how we're doing. Like,
Yeah.
Trent, I really like that law that you passed,
Right.
or Trent, I really didn't like this law that you passed. And so we really do have a front row seat when we come home, which again, we're home most of that period, but in that 2 years that House members stay or get elected,
Right.
we get to hear from the people that we represent what's working and what's not working. So while there's some people that would argue that now that Texas is the 8th largest economy in the world,
Right.
that maybe we should have a full-time legislature that meets every year,
Sure.
that is not something I would advocate for, because I really like the system we have in place. It allows us to come home again and be with our families, be in our jobs,
Sure.
and most importantly, to be around the people that we represent.
Right. So going off of that, now granted, you're running for Senate District 3. As a representative, what are some of the, what is some of the feedback? Because I mean, there's a lot of different things that have kind of been, there are a lot of topics: school vouchers, property tax, how are we going to navigate, this economy? What are we doing here? It always seems like to me, just as Joe Citizen out here, Texas follows. It almost seems like it follows on some things like Florida. You'll see Florida pop off and do something, and then it's like, okay, well, Texas a few years later will kind of come on board with something. And so, what's some of the feedback that you heard on some of the bills and some of the laws that have come into place that have been appreciated by the people that you've led?
Great question. I would acknowledge that from time to time, Texas doesn't always lead in terms of passing, and Florida really is probably the normal example you would give as a state that sometimes kind of pressures Texas on a conservative rating,
Right.
because obviously Texas is a very conservative state.
Sure.
We're a very conservative region of the state.
Right.
I just like this House district here that represents Jasper County, my House district, I have a top 10 most conservative Republican district in the state of Texas. Senate District 3
Right.
has the highest Republican voting strength of all 20 current Republican Senate districts in the state.
Okay.
So a very conservative part of the state that really matches well with, of course, my Christian beliefs and who I am as a conservative. So as a Texan, and of course as a member of the legislature, I always hate if we're not leading the country.
Sure.
And we're following a Florida, for example,
Right.
on a conservative measure. But normally that's not the case, Jay. I
Okay.
mean, normally Texas is held up as a model of a beacon of conservatism really across the entire United States, and I'm proud of that.
Sure.
You mentioned about what are some specific bills that I'm really proud of. As I travel around on this campaign, there's really 3 or 4 issues that really always really rise to the top that people want to talk about.
Right.
One of those, top of the list, Governor was out on the campaign trail talking about this week, is property taxes.
Sure.
I'm really proud of what the legislature has done the last 3 sessions to do our part to try to provide property tax relief. Again, number one issue I hear about from homeowners,
Yeah.
from business owners, is Trent, we've got to have some property tax relief in the state of Texas. I get it.
Yeah.
You know, I pay my fair share of property taxes too. And so what we have done at the state level is really only two ways, and I'm going to argue a third in a second, that the state can provide property tax relief. One is we can compress our school district M&O taxes, which
Right.
we've done the last 3 sessions.
Yeah.
We can also allow the voters of Texas, the citizens, to raise our homestead exemption, which is set in our state constitution, which of
Right.
course we just approved overwhelmingly last week.
Sure.
So that's traditionally the two ways the legislature can provide property tax relief.
Right.
Now, I would submit to you that one of my greatest frustrations last session, which, by the way, I did vote for, and we provided the largest property tax cut in American history.
Okay.
No other state has provided what we did. We provided $51 billion in our state budget
Right.
that we put and invested in our property tax relief fund, which again compresses our school district property taxes. So I'm very proud of that. But here's the problem. While we have done an admirable job on this side of the equation,
Yeah.
what we haven't done, and what I have been advocating for, is we need appraisal reform in the state of Texas.
100%.
Because as you know, and as your listeners and viewers know, it's one thing for us, the legislature, to drop your property tax on your school district taxes.
Right.
But if your appraised value skyrockets,
Yes.
it more than eats up what we are trying to do in Austin.
Sure.
And so it has really never set well with me, even from when I used to be on a school board,
Yeah.
and we were out of compliance with the state of Texas, what they said our local valuation should be, that we haven't addressed appraisal reform.
Right.
And I was really glad to see the governor this week talk about in his 5 different goals that he has for property tax relief, hopefully to eliminate property taxes eventually in the state of Texas, that appraisal caps and appraisal reform is one of those areas that he wants to focus on. I actually have filed bills on this in 2 sessions, and so I'm really excited to hear the governor get on the bandwagon with that.
Sure.
Because we need that kind of leadership, of course, at the executive level, but also in the Senate and the House through the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker, to really move the needle on appraisal reform. Number one issue I hear about. As I've talked to people, hundreds if not thousands of people over the last few months, and I talk about appraisal reform, I've yet to have one person come up to me, Jay, and say, I don't agree with you. So it's a top of mind issue for me.
Sure.
It's a priority for mine
Right.
to accomplish next session. But I'm really proud, again, back to your question, I'm really proud of what we've done on property tax relief, but there's a lot more that we need to do.
Gotcha. So, to me, one of the things I've sat back and watched, I mean, personally, I think if somebody's reached 65 years of age, why are we still beating them up with property taxes? If somebody's went out here and served their country in the military,
Exactly.
why are they still, now, granted, I get it.
Yeah.
You got some of these guys who go in and then they, something happens and then they come out of the military or whatever. But I'm talking about people who have dedicated their life to the military. Why are those guys paying property taxes in the state of Texas? I mean, it's just it doesn't make much sense to me. People who are serving the interests of America, and then they come back and they're saddled with property taxes. I mean, granted, that's the reason you guys are doing what y'all are doing, and it's not me there, because I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Once somebody reaches a certain age, they ought to have the security to say, okay, we own our home,
Right.
we own our property.
That's right.
That is. I mean, 65 years, I would say, hey, you're good. You're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
That's just maybe just juvenile logic, but I mean, it just makes sense to me.
Well, it makes sense to a lot of people, and I will tell you that there have been conversations really over the last couple of sessions, maybe last 3 sessions, amongst some members of the legislature look at doing exactly what you're saying.
Really?
Yes. look
Wow.
at eliminating property taxes for those that are 65 and older. That's, of course, everybody, I'd say not everybody, but the Republican majority right now, our goal would be, we would love to eliminate property taxes.
Right.
I've been talking about this for years,
Right.
But to your point, the first group, arguably, that we ought to start with are our senior citizens.
Sure.
And our veterans.
Yeah.
Veterans Day was just 2 days ago.
Exactly.
And there's no state that takes more pride in honoring our veterans than the state of Texas.
I think that's a huge first. If you guys were able to pull that off, I think that would change a little bit of the argument, or maybe a little bit of the venom. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, there's a lot of older people out here. There's a lot of veterans out here that if we are the champion of our veterans,
That's right.
and our elderly, if we are, that's the question. And so, the proof is in the law.
That's right.
And so, to me, I think that would be a great starting block for moving towards some real reform on that side of things. Granted, I'm all with you on the appraisal reform because, we've had this migration, I think is the political term, the migration from the West into Texas. And that affects appraisals.
Exactly.
And it continues to affect appraisals. And I mean, it's one of the reasons why there's some stalling out in some of the real estate markets right now in certain areas throughout the state. But, it definitely has changed the valuation of property. I mean, they're selling, not picking on Bonware, Texas, but they're selling property in Bonware, Texas for way more per acre than maybe was 10 years ago. You could have picked that thing, you could have picked those properties up for way cheaper. But because of the appraisals and how the appraisal system works, and I'll be honest, I mean, I've talked to the appraisal district here, I've talked to the appraisal district over in Newton County, and, reform is definitely something that's needed.
It is. And to be fair to the local appraisal districts, there's a lot of folks that don't really understand the current appraisal system in the state of Texas.
Right.
We currently have a system, and it's been in place for decades, over 40 years, our appraisal system. When we created appraisal districts, the legislature, again, way, not before I was born, but close.
Right.
So the current system says that Austin, Texas, through our controller's office, the Comptroller of Public Accounts, that they have a division within the agency that every 2 years they look at the school district valuations for all over 1,000 school districts in the state of Texas.
Right.
And they tell your local appraisal district, Jasper County, Newton County, the two you mentioned, for example, this is what the property valuation should be in Jasper ISD. And if your local appraisal district is not within 5% of what Austin, Texas tells them that it should be, then guess what they do? They withhold money from your local school. So I've got a problem with that on a lot of fronts.
It's the tail wagging the dog.
It's the tail wagging the dog. If you're truly going to have local appraisal districts, well, let them have the autonomy to set local appraisal values without interference from Austin, Texas. The other thing that I hate about the current system is if you're not in compliance with what the state says that you should be, then you're going to take it out on the kids.
Yeah.
And they have no say in this process.
Sure.
And so we're going to penalize the kids and the quality of education that they get in that local school district. That's just immoral and wrong. And so I've got obviously a beef with the current system. So that's something that I, again, have filed legislation to try to fix.
Sure.
The other thing I'll just mention quickly is especially here in rural East and Southeast Texas, I don't want people to lose sight of this. We're blessed to have our ag and our timber value property tax exemption.
100% agree.
And let me tell you, that is something we as rural lawmakers fight for.
Right.
And I don't want people to take that for granted. As we talk about, property appraisals and whatnot, that is something the state of Texas has gifted us.
Yeah.
But it could be taken away. And I'm not saying it's going to, but I'm saying it has come up in conversations as we talk about appraisal reform and property taxes. I don't want to say big city, but our urban and suburban colleagues are always like, why did these folks get a special exemption? Again, not appreciating that
Right.
rural Texas feeds not only the state, but really the country and the world. And so it's important that our lawmakers in the House and the Senate fight to make sure we keep our ag and our timber exemptions in place.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've heard out here on the street is that, going back to Senate District 3, is that, it almost felt like people out here, and I don't know when exactly this started, but there's kind of this sentiment that the people didn't really feel really represented, And, when you're talking about how conservative this area is, the research studies on Senator Nichols makes it really clear that he maybe wasn't as conservative as everyone else. And this is not any slam on him, just looking from a standpoint of voting record and those types of things. And there's some people out here who felt unrepresented or just kind of maybe I don't know what the best word is for it, but maybe that he didn't represent as strong of a conservative voice as we would have liked. And so I guess my question for you is, because you do have an opponent in this race, and your opponent has dubbed you Nichols 2.0, and there's been a number of statements about you being Austin establishment and not conservative and this type of thing, but that's not what I'm hearing. And so
Well, that's not what my track record actually is.
Okay.
And I think it's important that people, as they engage in looking at this race, and of course as they prepare to go vote, one thing I'm proud of is my track record.
Right.
I have the benefit of having a proven conservative track record, been recognized by many organizations, as a courageous conservative, as someone that will stand up, of course, for our rural values, our conservative Christian values in rural
Right.
Texas. And so, I will never take a back seat to anyone that wants to challenge me on my conservative bona fides, because, again, my track record speaks different, and
Okay.
it tells a different story. And so, it's one of the things about campaigns is, and it's unfortunate, is that sometimes you do draw an opponent that wants to run a negative campaign.
Right.
I've never done that, which is why I've always been successful. And my faith in the way I was raised, and really I think the overwhelming majority of people in East and Southeast Texas, they want someone that is going to tell them the truth, represent their values, make sure that we are taking care of our conservative priorities in the state of Texas.
Right.
And you mentioned this about Senator Nichols, but someone that's visible, someone that's present,
Right.
someone that can be held accountable for
Sure.
their voting record.
Sure.
And again, I'm extremely proud, and you use the word establishment. Of course, if you've ever held an elective office, if someone wants to,
You're the
you're the establishment guy, right? Well, in this case, one of the things that's going to be a major point of distinction between myself and whoever ends up filing for this seat is my track record of delivering conservative results. And it speaks for itself. And, someone asked me here the other day, they said, Trent, you've been reelected or elected and reelected, you're in your 7th term, you've got some experience. But my question is, do your voters back home, do they like you?
Right. Yeah.
And look, I've been blessed, and I think this speaks to the point of my conservative bona fides. When I first ran for office, I had to run against an incumbent at that time, and was successful. Fast forward, a few elections, I didn't even draw an opponent because I want to believe people were satisfied with what they were seeing and what the results they were getting.
Sure.
This last cycle, in 23-24, I did draw an opponent for the first time and squeaked out a victory with 83% of the vote in my House district. So again, a top 10 conservative Republican district in the state of Texas, 83% of the folks said, Trent, we like the job you're doing, keep up the good work. And so I'm excited to bring that proven track record of delivering results to this Senate race. And the other thing I would say, Jay, is especially in the Texas Senate,
Yeah.
I would hope people would want someone that could hit the ground running on day one,
Yeah.
that knows all the senators, that knows every House member, that has a working relationship with all of our statewide elected officials, a close relationship with Governor Abbott. I can do that. I can make sure that we're protecting our water, that we're delivering results on property tax relief,
Right.
that we're pushing back on our radical woke agenda that the left is pushing. And you talked about the growth in Texas. Those people, a lot of them aren't bringing our conservative values with them.
Sure.
And so we've got to have a state senator that's going to stand up and fight, not only for our conservative values, but our rural values.
Right.
And there's only about five senators that could be classified as rural in the Texas Senate. So we've got to have someone that can hit the ground running on day one and has a proven track record of results.
So if someone's out there and they are wanting to reach out to you guys and kind of see what your current path of speaking engagements and that type of thing, you guys have a website that's set up, or how is that working right now?
Yes, so the website is probably the best place to go.
Okay.
And or my Facebook page, which
Okay.
is under State Representative Trent Ashby. But my website is trentashby.com.
Easy enough.
Easy, very
Okay.
easy. And so there's contact information on there if people actually want to visit with someone on the team.
Yeah.
If you want to see where I'm going or where I've been, we update my Facebook page every day.
Okay.
As we were talking about yesterday, I was in Athens.
Yeah.
Up there for an event. We've posted about that. And of course, we'll post about being in Jasper County today.
Sure. Absolutely. Is there any final thought that you want to leave with the people in this area?
Well, I think yes, I do. When I look at the issues that I've worked on recently and what I hear about in this campaign, I can't underscore how important it is that we have someone that has the experience and a proven track record and the relationships to go to Austin and on day one make sure that we are protecting our water. It's water, property taxes,
Yeah.
and border security, and just protecting rural values really are the top 3 or 4 issues I hear about, and I'm just kind of
Right.
generalizing it
That's
when
true.
I say that. We haven't talked a lot about water, but I probably a lot of folks know what's happening a little north and west of here in Houston, Cherokee, Anderson, Henderson counties, where
Sure.
big money interests have bought up thousands of acres of land and they want to ship our groundwater, to the Metroplex. I've been proud of the work that I've done working with some of my House colleagues
Right.
to push back on that. And we've got a little temporary reprieve from our district court there in Palestine. But if that can happen there, it can happen right here anywhere in East and Southeast Texas.
Sure.
And so I am committed next session to going and fighting to protect our water resources that the good Lord has blessed us with in this region of the state. That is a top priority of mine. I've talked about property taxes. It's so important, though, also, Jay, that we have someone that's going to support our public schools.
Yeah.
Our public schools and our churches really are the backbone of all of our small communities throughout, this region. And as a former school board member, I'm really proud of what we did last session with the injection of new money for our public schools. Our teachers, long overdue pay raise.
Sure.
I'm going to continue to prioritize our rural schools, making sure that they have a seat at the table and that
Right.
they're heard. And then lastly, I think, Jay, what I would really end on is when you boil this all down, what I hope that people would want in their next state senator is someone that when they look in the mirror, they see someone that looks like them, someone that was born and raised here, someone that fights for the values and the beliefs that we hold near and dear here in this part of the state.
Right.
And as someone that's lived here my whole life, I'm a proud Christian, and we need people that reflect our values in Austin. I've been proud to do that in the Texas House, and it would be an honor to do that in the Texas Senate.
Trent, I really appreciate you taking time with me, man.
You bet, Jay.
You know, good luck in the race, and the actual the election, I guess it's March 3rd.
That's right.
And so you still have a few months of getting out here and meeting everybody, but hopefully this helps in the process. But once again, thanks for taking the time to come down here and sit down and talk with us.
Anytime, Jay. Thanks for having me.